Hello, James. Hello, Frederick. So, your new film, The Partisan, it's a story I wasn't particularly familiar with. So, James, I was going to ask you this story of Christine Skarbek, if I
Yeah,
pronounced that right.
Skarbek.
How did it first come to your attention?
Well, it first came to my attention actually when I was a boy. My grandmother, who was Polish, knew about Krystyna Skarbek, and I was a James Bond fan. And she told me about this this lady spy from Poland who was the real James Bond. So I knew about the story from way back, but I hadn't really thought about it until we started making this film when the producers approached me about writing a script about her, and it was kind of exciting to be reminded of this character from my past reappearing in my life.
So, generally, it's quite an unknown story, really, in history. Fred, how were you aware of it at all?
No, me personally, I wasn't at all. And yet, when the script landed on my desk, it launched a million questions for myself. James was great in that respect that he was able to fill in a lot of the blanks. But yeah, no, it was a truly fascinating story that was new to me myself. So.
So you play Roger in this, who's kind of like spy renaissance. What kind of did you manage to find out in your own research when you were preparing for the part, for the role?
Um, I guess as an actor, there's two ways that I would generally try to approach any role. The first being is that I need to find some way in to make the character feel real for myself in some sort of way to connect with, whether it be the historical context or with the emotional journey of the character as a human being, regardless of if it is sort of time and history. And sometimes that can be through a piece of music, sometimes that can be through a poem or a piece of writing. That's something that I discover. But in this one, it was very much, I think, a lot of what influenced my approach to it was really a change in the YouTube algorithm when I was in Poland. I'd done a lot of preparation beforehand, and thought about the character and okay, how can we could approach this, but being geographically different, the YouTube algorithm, and it was still quite early on in the war between Ukraine and Russia, so there was a lot of footage coming out of there, and there was a lot of it was still at a point where YouTube was quite uncensored with it, so they were quite graphic, and you were able to, I guess it was from a sort of more of a news standpoint and just straight up reporting, and what really hit me was we haven't moved on at all, really. Regardless of time or context, fighting one man to another in a trench, whether it's electronic drones flying above to record the whole footage, but the from a sort of foundational emotional point of view, these feelings will all be intrinsic to those who experience it, and that really, in my downtime, really, I've just fully immersed myself in that side of things. And then everyone on set, the locations that we were able to work with were phenomenal locations. We didn't have to spend much imagination in terms of how grim a lot of these places were, and there was one barracks in particular that we've spent a lot of time in, which I think had so many different occupiers over the years, and it read like a book. You could literally just go into a corner and start reading graffiti from Russians, from Americans, from whoever, and that really just focuses the mind, I guess. War is difficult, in any which way you spin it, and for me it was incredibly important to try and carry some of that across, really.
It's funny you should speak about locations, because I was going to ask you, James, about those locations. They are fantastic. It looks, phenomenal, and Poland is a beautiful country. But how problematic did some of those locations become once they were dressed and you're doing it, and specifically action set pieces in them?
Yeah, I mean, being a period piece, you have to stick within your frame. If you go a little further to the right or left, there's some modern signage or modern car or something like that. So
yeah,
that's always a challenge. And the other thing I think that was a big challenge is we put a lot of effort into trying to find the right locations, which I think we achieved very well, but it led to logistical problems because often it meant quite big excursions by cast and crew from one location to the other, which eats into your schedule and all of those boring things that you have to deal with. So it was a bit of a weighing up those two factors against each other to try and get the best that we could and trying to find the best place. We did a huge amount of recce's to try and get it right. And in fact, actually, when Russia first invaded Ukraine, we were down fairly near the Ukraine border. We had a few goes at getting the film made. That was one of the ones that stopped us, mainly because of refugees, the amount of refugees that were coming in, which led to there being no hotels. Everywhere was full, and we couldn't find a place to put the crew. And as you probably know, when you have to stop a film, even in very early stages of pre-production, to restart it involves rescheduling everything. So there were a lot of factors that came into consideration. We also had a brush with COVID early on.
That seems to be obligatory with every film shoot these days.
I guess, yeah. This one, apparently it was me who brought the COVID, but I'm not sure how anybody worked that out, but I was willing to take the hit for that one. But yeah, locations were crucial. And in a way, I suppose the most complicated one was trying to find a French town, because everything's filmed in Poland. The whole thing was filmed in Poland. And we had amazing location managers and production designers. These guys were incredible, and they worked really hard to try and find the ideal place. And by the way, this is also largely setting a town where we had to make a French square and then blow it up. So yeah, sorry, it's a bit of a spoiler alert, but
no, not at all. I mean, you say about the action sequences. I mean, Frederick, you have experience of action films yourself. So how? I guess you're a bit of an old hand now with these kind of sequences.
Sure. I mean, I'm lucky enough to have worked on many projects and try and learn what I can from each project, I guess. Yeah, it's it's put in front of you. I'm more than happy to get stuck in and get involved and get my hands literally more than dirty, but like covered in blood and whatever. And yeah, it's all I ever hope for, and I guess the most important thing that I've learned is just safety is key, and as long as everyone's paying attention and all working together, then I mean, there was one scene where I had to do with I think it was like Poland's kickboxing champion or whatever. So he was a big guy. And I'm always cautious about how much to, if I'm the one essentially dishing out the pain, work with the other actor in terms of what's feasible and what levels we can take it to. And he just said, yeah, no, go full beans and just have at it. And I'm like, look, I appreciate you're a mountain of a man, but we still got to all come home and adrenaline kicks in. And yeah, no, I mean, it was lucky enough to work with a fantastic team. And as I say, we didn't really have to suspend much imagination. There were many times when it felt really harrowing, and you feel it on a cellular level within your body. You know that blimey, that's been a rough. Like, sure, everyone walks home and is safe, and we shot a movie, but there's an element within you, no matter how much you suspend belief, that you know you've still gone through on some level the process. You felt the heat of the explosion. You've watched the blood pour out the guy. You've done whatever it is, and you know, it has an innate effect on all of us as human beings as well. You know, so
You say about the blood. One thing that I've always found actors find very uncomfortable is when they're covered in blood and it's drying and it's, you know, not like you see in the film where it's a few minutes. You know, you spent the whole day, if not days, if not weeks, covered in blood. Is that your experience, that it's just not a pleasant experience, regardless of what's going on behind you?
sure.
Blood.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes particularly the types of blood, fake blood that they use. You know, it becomes quite sticky, and often you'll just have to put fresh blood on top of old sticky blood. And yeah, I mean, there's an element of discomfort with it, but no, you know, no more than the scratchy clothes that the historically accurate clothes that we got to wear every day, and it's scratchy and uncomfortable, and you know, it's cold and whatever.
The shoes were often difficult, weren't they?
Shoes, you know,
grip on shoes.
That was yeah, but it's you know, it's all par for the course, really. For me, it's all, you know, part of the magic of making movies, really. I love it.
There's one scene in it I'm going to suggest was probably the most uncomfortable for you, because I wouldn't want to do it if I was an actor. Is you have a nude scene in this, fleetingly. But I can't imagine that's, you know, a particularly comfortable scenario to have to shoot it in, for male or female. So I'm guessing it was close set and all that sort of thing.
Yes, it was, but what no one will ever know about that day, and not making any excuses, but it was it was in the corner of a cold barracks with no heating whatsoever.
I can see where this is going.
And it was almighty cold that morning. The sun was illuminating the other side of the barracks at that point. And yeah, with very little warning, okay, we're moving on to this scene. Okay, cool. Quickly get changed, back you come. Boy, like, it was cold before, but now it's triple cold. Yeah, so whatever nerves or whatever you might have is actually just trying to keep all your bits together, really, right? You know, it's not
literally.
Well, yeah, the overall scenario is far, or the actual temperature battle was more daunting than getting my bits out. That's fine.
So then, it's a really enjoyable film, if that's the right word. Really kind of a intriguing and interesting story. But then I was going to ask you both, what is your favourite war film or war films?
Brad, you want to go first, or one if you want me to?
No, I mean, I'm a weird and wonderful, twisted mind. Strangely, I went to art school and wrote a dissertation about representation of war through movies. So I spent my early 20s watching pretty much every war movie that was made for a long time, up until that point, and obviously there's been many numerous since. But I think two that always stick with me, really, for very different reasons. Love Apocalypse Now, just because it's weird and mental and crazy, and yet deals with a lot of the sort of inner conflicts surrounding war, surrounding the correctness of war, surrounding following orders and whatnot. And then Thin Red Line is always a film that sort of stuck with me, and in terms of just beautifully shot, and there was some really, again, it's just, war's horrible. It's not a fun place.
It's an interesting choice. What about yourself, James?
Well, I'd also mention two. I mean, there's so many. One for personal reasons, and one because I think it probably depicted the horrors of war better than anything else I can think of, which is the film Come and See. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a Russian
Right.
film made in the
Yeah, I've not
80s.
seen it, but I have heard of it.
It's very harrowing. It's worth it. You know, it follows a boy who volunteers to be a partisan and his experience and how he kind of turns into an old man by the end of the film through everything that happens to him and what he sees. That's an incredible film, just as a piece of visceral filmmaking. And then the other one I'd mention is my dad's film, Eye of the Needle. For obvious reason, I'd bring that up.
Yeah.
But it kind of got lost in the collapse of, I forget which studio it was, Heaven's Gate. Heaven's Gate had just been released and destroyed the studio with what an utter disaster it was. And the next film out was my dad's film, Eye of the Needle, starring Donald Sutherland and Kate Nelligan. And in a way, that was pretty an influence on me with this story, being about clandestine aspects of the war and a spy. And I thought it was very interesting because the main character is the villain, this Nazi spy with this piece of information that will win the war for the Germans if he can just get out of Britain and get it to them. And I guess I like flawed characters and dark characters interest me. So I think Donald Sutherland's performance in that, balancing being the villain, but also showing some humanity, is very interesting. Adds an element beyond just the straight good and evil story. So yeah, I guess I'd pick those two. I can think of so many more. But